We've lived with the iPhone 14 Pro for a month. The things that we've loved and the things that we haven't loved are not the things we expected.
We'll take a trip to Dynamic Island and talk about the new Pro camera system to help you decide if you should upgrade.
We'll share our experience with setting up this phone, which was a total nightmare.
But first, we'll talk about the features that make the iPhone 14 Pro so special. Let's set sail to Dynamic Island.
Dynamic Island is really cool. I use TuneIn Radio to listen to Yankees games because I refuse to pay for cable, and I just think it's really neat that that little Yankees logo is up there in the Dynamic Island. It's also helpful to keep an eye on my battery life when I'm using the new AirPods Pro.
Didn't we make an awesome AirPods comparison video the other day?
We did, but it's probably too early to send people somewhere else.
You're right. I'll stay on Tropic.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing where Apple takes Dynamic Island from here. I don't think they're done innovating just yet.
I really like Dynamic Island. Maybe too much. When you're listening to music, I think it's awesome you can press and hold to pause it right on the screen. I think the little animated audio waveform during phone calls is awesome, and that you can turn on speakerphone right from Dynamic Island.
I strangely feel like I'm not getting the most out of Dynamic Island because I'm not actively trying to use it every time I unlock my iPhone, but maybe that's just an unrealistic expectation.
In fact, David, a lot of people who watch our videos think that they're not getting the most out of their iPhones. Well, however you use your iPhone, that's good enough.
Regardless, I'm just really impressed Apple managed to take this ugly pill design and turn it into something useful that looks good.
It really is genius marketing. This next new feature isn't really new because it's been around on Androids forever, but it is new to the iPhone.
I'm really not impressed with always on display. It's still really bright. It's just a darker version of the lock screen.
That's true, but to be fair, Apple did make the always on versions of the wallpapers a little different than the lock screens themselves, and that's pretty cool.
I just turned off always on display on my iPhone. I feel like it doesn't really add much for me, and I noticed that my battery was draining a lot faster when always on was on.
I leave it on, but my complaint is essentially the same as David's. Always on display should be functional first. Get rid of the wallpaper. All we need to see is the beautiful Apple text. But to Apple's credit, they use the proximity sensor to turn off always on display if the phone is in your pocket or face down on a table. I do wish that when you turned your iPhone upside down at a table, that Do Not Disturb would turn on. Apple has stolen features from Android in the past. Come on, Apple, let's get on it.
Should you upgrade to the iPhone 14 Pro for the new features alone? Maybe not, but the camera is a different story. Let's talk about it. I'm not much of an iPhoneographer. Pretty much any smartphone camera can do what I need it to do. That being said, this camera is really impressive and a significant upgrade from earlier models.
Apple bragged about the new 48 megapixel Pro camera system in their event, but they didn't tell you that the only way to take 48 megapixel photos is using the Pro RAW file format. The file sizes are massive. This one was 100 megabytes. One David took earlier today was 118 megabytes. Stick around to the end of the video and we'll tell you a secret to make those files 10 times smaller.
We compared the iPhone 14 Pro camera to 4 other models. We were pretty shocked by the results. I was really impressed with how the iPhone SE3 held up to the 14 Pro. Sure, things get murky quick when you start zooming in, but if you're someone who just likes taking little cute cat pics, the iPhone SE3 holds its own. I think that has at least something to do with the A15 processor in the iPhone SE3. That's the same chip in the 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max.
But as David said, when we took a zoomed in photo, the SE3 really fell off the map because it doesn't have a telephoto lens. No surprise here. The iPhone 13 Pro with its 3x optical zoom was closest in quality to the 14 Pro. The 11 Pro and 12 Pro were adequate, and the iPhone SE3 was just not good.
It was really interesting to see how the boats in the photo we took slowly started to look less and less like boats. They're clear and distinguishable in the iPhone 14 Pro, and once you get to the iPhone SE3, they look like cars on pavement.
Next, we took a close-up picture of a flower. Zoomed out, same deal, the iPhone SE3 did a good job.
The iPhone 13 Pro, though, was a big letdown. Maybe it was an issue with the photo we took, but it seemed like the 13 Pro struggled to pick out what to focus on, whereas the 14 Pro really honed in on that one pink flower.
Then when we took a zoomed in photo, the 14 Pro kicked all the other phones' collective butts.
There was such incredible detail in the photo the iPhone 14 Pro took that was just totally unmatched by its predecessors. It just seems that in general, Apple is getting better at being able to recognize objects in the foreground of images. We're seeing this with depth effect and the new ability in iOS 16 to pull out objects from images. Ranking these phones was easy. The iPhone 14 Pro was the best across the board, and it wasn't remotely close.
We gave the the 13 Pro and the 12 Pro both 3s. The wide lens looked better on the 13 Pro, but the telephoto lens looked better on the 12 Pro.
And the SE3 and the 11 Pro were both 2s. The SE3 wide camera was better than the 11 Pro's, but the 11 Pro's 2x optical zoom was better than the SE3's 3x digital zoom.
One thing we noticed when we went outside to take these photos was just how amazing the iPhone 14 Pro's display actually is.
The bright display combined with the 120 Hz refresh rates make for a very smooth experience. This phone is really bright, almost to a fault. I've really had to crank up reduce white point when I'm in a dimly lit environment. We'll talk about the impact that has on battery life a little bit later.
The biggest display upgrade of the last 5 years is the 120 Hz display. And for that reason, I think the jump between the 12 Pro and the 13 Pro is much bigger than the jump between the 13 Pro and the 14 Pro.
Once you go 120, you can't go back, and I think it's really stupid that Apple didn't build 120 Hz displays into the 14 and 14 Plus. The Google Pixel 6a got roasted for its 60 Hz display. Apple deserves that same criticism. The 13 Pro and 14 Pro displays are a clear step above everything else, but we're giving the edge to the 14 Pro just because it has a higher peak brightness. Let's talk about performance. We ran CPU and GPU benchmark tests on the 14 Pro, 13 Pro, 12 Pro, 11 Pro, and SE3. Unsurprisingly, the phones with better processors perform better.
If you watched last month's Apple event closely, you noticed that Apple compared the A13 chip to the new A16 chip. But what happened to the 14 and 15? Well, the jump just isn't that impressive.
The A16 chip performed about 7% better than the A15, but about 30% better than the A13, and that's why Apple put it in their graph. It's just way more compelling. One other complaint I have about the 14 and 14 Plus, they still have the A15 chip. Why would you buy a $900 iPhone 14 Plus with an older chip and a worse display? In hand, the iPhone 14 Pro. It's a fast and zippy phone. I've only had one negative experience, and it's a pretty fringe use case. I play a game called Rainmakers on DraftKings. It's a very resource-heavy web page, so when that's open on my iPhone, it just slows everything down. But that's not an issue with the phone, it's probably an issue with the website.
What the heck is Rainmakers, David?
It's like they took fantasy football and combined it with FIFA Ultimate Team for one great experience, and it's kind of like my CrossFit now, it's all I think
Okay,
about.
I don't understand any of the words you just said. Let's move on. What about 4G versus 5G?
I don't have pretty much any 5G where I live, so 5G really isn't a concern for me.
The iPhone SE3 has 5G, but it's not the fast 5G you'll find in cities only. It's the slower 5G. The iPhone 11 Pro and older don't have any 5G at all, but to be honest, 4G is more than fast enough for most people.
If you live in an area with really good 5G, you will need the 12 or newer to connect to those networks.
Speaking of 5G, let's talk about Apple's controversial decision to remove the SIM card from the iPhone.
We set up new iPhones every year. We're not strangers to this process.
Subscribers will recognize this post I made the day I got the phone, loving this new feature on my iPhone 14 Pro.
2,200 likes. They love to see you suffer.
It said, unable to transfer phone number, your account is ineligible for transfer, contact Verizon. I went on Twitter, DM'd Verizon support.
That's a pro tip for you. Carriers are much more responsive on Twitter than they are anywhere else.
After a long wait, I sent David Lynch a screenshot from the Verizon rep that said, so eSIMs are not available on prepaid, just so you're aware.
Not good. I have a prepaid plan too.
Eventually, I sent the Verizon rep a screenshot of another rep saying prepaid plans are eligible for eSIM. Then an hour later, I sent the rep the eSIM number from the back of the iPhone box, and she was happy to activate it. Whole process took a few hours. eSIM is fine. I don't care if I can't pop the SIM card out of my iPhone. But Apple needs to work out the kinks, and Verizon needs to do a better job of training their customer service reps.
I already missed the days of having that physical SIM card tray. It took me several hours to get my phone set up.
I also think what Apple said about every carrier supporting eSIM is misleading. Smaller carriers like Ting don't support eSIM yet. Competition is important. I don't like to see smaller carriers not be able to keep up with the larger carriers because that's how they get pushed out.
Let's talk about another frustrating part of the iPhone 14 Pro, and this is maybe controversial. We're going to talk about battery life. The battery life on this phone is really not good. It does not last as long as the iPhone 13 Pro that I upgraded from. I use my iPhone a lot, and there's a very clear difference.
I'm not seeing significantly better battery life with a brand new phone, and that's why I think David's frustration makes sense.
I've seen the battery test videos. I don't care what they say. They're wrong, I'm right, and that's my review.
Now we're going to get a bunch of comments when people say, that's just your opinion about
Yeah,
this
it
thing.
is.
And then I'm always like, it's a review.
It's a review.
That's what a review is.
It's a review. Those of you with an iPhone 13 Pro, and I was one of those people, probably not worth the upgrade, but if you have an SE3 11 Pro or older, if you've got the money lying around, it's definitely a big upgrade, and I would recommend doing it.
iPhone 12 Pro people, the biggest day-to-day difference is the 120 hertz display. If you haven't seen it yet, though, you don't know what you're missing. Ignorance is bliss, so maybe you can hold off for another year.
But once you go 120, you can't go back.
Remember how we said we're going to tell you a secret about how to take the 48 megapixel iPhone 14 Pro photos and shrink them down to a manageable size?
We cover that secret and a whole lot more in our new iOS 16 secrets video that's appearing on the screen. Check it out, you'll enjoy it.